Hi, I'm Ashley Shelton. Welcome to my podcast here today, Shelton Ministries. Today is November the 22nd, Friday, and it's almost Thanksgiving. So I thought that with it being almost Thanksgiving, I thought what would be a more perfect podcast title than to talk about the goodness of God. God, He has been so good to our family. He's done more for us than we could have ever asked or think. And when I look back over the past 2 years, the trial that He took us through, it was just amazing to see how He carried us through it and how He was there with us each and every step of the way. And I thank Him for everything that He did do. And here today I would like to talk a little bit about just how good God is. And whenever God asks us to do something, it's not always easy. And whenever He tells us that He has a job for us to do, we can't always assume that we are already qualified to do that job. I remember back in 2021, I was outside and I heard the Lord say to me, He said, "Ashley, I have a job for you to do." And whenever He said He had a job for me to do, I thought, it must be soon. It must come be here like tomorrow. And 2021 passed, 2022 passed, 2023 passed, and 2024 came. And that was 3 years later. And I still did not really comprehend or understand what the job was that God was calling me to do. But I knew enough to know that anything He allows to happen to us, it is not a wasted season. And I think that if I had known then what I know now, it would have made things so much better. But God chose not to reveal any details. And that is where He was building our faith. He was building our prayer life. And I can say this, we would not have the prayer life that we have today had it not been for the trial that we were faced with in 2022. And one of the things that it has brought us to is to bring us to our church to pray throughout the week. And that is one thing that my husband does on his own, and I do that on my own with the kids. And that bond that I have been able to build with the kids and during that time is a bond that I can never ever replace with anything else. It's just such a special time and such special memories. And here today, as we was getting ready to leave the church from praying, Luke, his thing that he likes to do is he likes to hit the drum, the bass drum, and he's up there hitting the bass drum today, and he's hitting the drum really loud, and I couldn't really understand what it was he was saying. But once he went banging the drum, I asked him, I said, "What was it you was saying?" And he said, "I was saying nothing is too hard for God." Because, Mommy, it is true. And I thought, He has such faith. And it's just for a mom, that's just something that makes my heart happy. And it's something that nothing can ever take the place of that. And those 2 years, I can see how God used that time to develop like He did to get us to where we are now, spiritually speaking. And God is the God of second chances, and I'm thankful for that. Here it would have been this year. It was earlier in this year. God told me to do something, and I still remember where I was standing. I still can remember everything about that day. It's still very vivid in my mind, and I can remember God told me to do something, and I was scared, and I said, God, no, I'm scared. And he told me again, he said, I want you to do this. And I said, God, no, I'm scared. And we were going back and forth there for a few minutes, and I'll never forget how that all unfolded. And it was about 3 days later, I was over at my church praying, and I heard God say, he said, Ashley, when you told me no, he said that was the same as denying me. And you know, I'm thankful that God gave me a second chance. I can remember praying and asking him to forgive me, telling him how sorry I was. And he said, will you please give me another chance? And he didn't immediately give me another chance. It was some months later. And I can remember I was getting very discouraged, and I thought, well, I did it. God knows. Maybe he just knows that he can't trust me now because I told him no, and now he's thinking he can't trust me. And I'll never forget the day that God gave me my second chance. I still remember where I was. I still remember how it happened. Everything about that day is just as vivid as the day whenever I told God no. And here on Wednesday, the Lord, he told me, I knew he was waiting on me to talk, and I knew not to tell God no, because I knew I wasn't ever going down that road again. And I remember sitting there, and seconds felt like hours at that moment. And I remember I said, God, I cannot do this. And I had reasons for saying why I couldn't do it. And I told God that too. I said, God, I can't do this. I can't do it. I said, I just can't. And I told him my reason why. And I'm telling you, I did not see God. No, I did not. But it was as if he was as close to me as to what this mic is here right now. And he was right in my face. And he said, you are not a coward. You are a lion. Now open your mouth so I can speak. And that's all it took. And it was like, no arguing there. And I opened my mouth, and I don't really remember what I said. All I know is that it completely drained me, and I can remember thinking, I'm so happy I'm sitting where I'm sitting, because there was a very cool breeze going through at that moment. And I'm thankful, though, that God gave me that second chance, because God does not always give everybody second chances. And in that moment, the devil had me convinced that I was going to get everything wrong, and that I wasn't going to actually hear what God was saying, that it was going to all be wrong, and that it was not going to be His voice that I was going to hear. And I was listening to what the enemy was saying instead of knowing that God was going to see me through it. And I'm thankful, like I said, that God did give me a second chance. But whenever God said, "You're not a coward, you're a lion," and the ironic thing about it is that on a week before that, I had surgery, and right before they took me back first, the doctor was questioned as to whether I was healthy enough to come in for this surgery. And my doctor, she looked at the person that was questioning this, and she was bold as a lion, and she said, "This surgery is happening today." And that just stuck in my mind, and I thought, she was bold as a lion. She did not second guess anything. And I thought, why was I listening to the enemy when the enemy told me that, telling me these lies that I could not do it, that I was not going to get it right, and that God was going to misguide me on it. And I'm thankful, though, like I said, that God did come to me at that moment, because had He not come to me at that moment, I probably would have, I know I was not going to say anything. I know I wasn't going to. It's not I don't think, it's I know I wasn't going to. So I am thankful that God has taught me things along the way, and that I have learned to listen for His voice whenever I second question myself. And that is one of my biggest downfalls, is second questioning myself on things. And the strange thing is I had no problem. I used to teach college classes, and I had no problem going in before 60, 70 students and giving them an accounting lesson. I had absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. There was one time, though, that there was a group of high school boys in the class, and they were saying not very nice things towards me. But thankfully, my boss, she found out about it, and she put a stop to that. And that was the only time, though, in all of the 12, 13 years that I taught, that I was ever felt like that I could not do that job for that moment, or not do the job, but second guess my ability to do what I was doing. I remember thinking, if I can just sit in a chair and teach this, everything will be all great. But I had to stand up before the class and write it all out on the board on what I was teaching them, so sitting was not an option. But thankfully, God sent somebody to put a stop to that. And teenagers can really be mean. But that's maybe a different topic for a different time. But I was reading here earlier, I was studying this here earlier about where God talks about a lion in the Bible. And one of the chapters that I was brought to was, let me see here where it went to. Revelations 21:8, it says, "But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the unstable, as the murderers, and the immorals, and the adulterers." And I thought, oh my gosh, here God tells me you are not falling into the category of any of these things here. I'm telling you, you are a lion. Now, don't let yourself fall into any of those categories there. And, I also think about Jacob. Jacob, was he considered a coward. I mean, his brothers, they led us all to believe that he was not a very strong person. And but actually, we know different there about Jacob. And there was one verse. Let me see here if I can find it. It was a very good verse that God had showed me earlier today. I do believe it was in Proverbs. Oh, I'm not finding it at the moment. I know it was in Proverbs that I read this. Because it talked about the lion and their righteousness, and I can't remember exactly where it was that I did see it. Well, anyways, maybe I will, I know it's there, I'll think of it here probably right after I get done with this podcast, but I am thankful though that God does give second chances. Not always, but I'm thankful He gave me a second chance. And now I know whenever God calls me to do something, He's teaching me day by day not to second guess it, but to be bold and do exactly what He is saying. And I'm just thankful. I did have this all thought out here, and I was joking around with my husband here a few minutes ago, right before I started this podcast. He said, "Where's your notes at?" And I said, I don't need notes. I said, I have it all wrote down in my brain. And I said, but if I get on there and I forget, I said, it's going to be your fault. And evidently, I did forget, but I could have never asked God to send me a better husband than what He did. And thankfully, Justin did get all my technical stuff figured out here tonight. I was having problems getting background sounds and not being able to fully record everything, and getting the mics hooked up there to my camera. And he come in and he got it fixed, and I was like, what did you do? How did you do that? And of course he didn't tell me what he did, so I guess next time, or if I do get down here or one of the kids get messing with the stuff again, that he will just have to come and do it himself, since he didn't explain it to me on how to fix it. But lion in the Bible, in the dictionary, it says lions are mentioned in the Bible 150 times. I never really realized how many times that lion was actually mentioned. And it's just amazing how what God can do and how God will work. And I know that probably people are probably going to watch this, and they're probably going to be like, we know the exact verse that you're talking about there in Proverbs that talks about not being a coward, but about being bold as a lion. And now this is going to really bother me until I do figure this out. Maybe it was Proverbs 29:25. I do believe that might have been where it was. Let's see. let's see, I think that I might have just found it. Proverbs 29:25, and of course my Bible app has decided not to work. Let me just see here what 29:25 does talk about. Okay, 29:25, it says, don't fall into the trap of being a coward, but trust the Lord and you will be safe. And that's actually not the verse that I had found here earlier, but you know, it is what it is, and I wish that I could have found that verse, but I didn't. And here with Thanksgiving coming up, I just thank God for what He's done. So far, I have had absolutely no back pain, no head pressure that I have dealt with for 2 years since I fell down a set of steps whenever I was on a trip to be baptized. And all of that not miraculously, I actually had surgery. There was like absolutely no reason as to why that surgery worked. My doctor said, all you can say is God intervened. And why, I don't know. But what I do know is that there was a reason as to why God wanted that surgery to be done. And maybe the only way He knew I would ever have that surgery to be done is to send me down the path that He chose to send me down for 2 years. And it's kind of amazing how I did even come in contact with this doctor, because I had not seen her since Luke was born, and that was back in 2017. And here back in the spring, I was in Barboursville, West Virginia, which is about an hour and a half here from our house. And I was at a sporting goods store because I went to buy a punching bag, because I decided that I needed to get some muscles built up, because I was starting to get weak from where I wasn't doing stuff like I once was able to do. So I thought a punching bag would be my answer. And as we was leaving that store, there was a Highway 55 that was across the road from it. Well, the Highway 55 had shut down, and I don't know when the Highway 55 had shut down, but it did. And across from there was a Longhorn Steakhouse. So we went to the Longhorns. It was my niece and my daughter. And whenever we walked in, this man walked in. And I looked at that man and I thought, I know you. And of course he wouldn't have known me, but I knew him because I was friends with his daughter on Facebook and on Instagram. And so he wouldn't have known me, but he was standing there and he was waiting to be seated. And we were standing there waiting to be seated also. Well, I pull my phone out and I bring this picture up because his daughter had just posted a picture of him like 3 days before that. And I showed it to my niece and I said, who does this person look like right here? And of course she's looking at it and I'm like, and I point to the man in front of us, and she's like, oh my gosh, Ashley, it's him. Who is this? And I'm like, I'll explain that to you later. So I asked the man, I'm like, are you, I said my doctor's name. I said, are you her dad? And he was like, yeah, I'm her dad. And immediately, I sat down, we got seated at our table, and immediately it was like God said, Ashley, you need to contact his daughter and get an appointment. And I'm like, but Lord, I don't want to fool with that. I'm going through all this other testing. That's the last thing that I want to deal with, is to find out maybe something with that could possibly be wrong. I'm like, I don't want to do that. And I didn't tell God no. I just told him that I really did not want to go down that road. And so as I sat there, it just like pressure just like built up on my chest, and I could like hardly breathe. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm gonna call right now. So I pulled my phone out and I called, and I said, yes, I need to get an appointment. They're like, well, she's booked up until September. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I just need to get an appointment with her. And as it happily worked out, my sister, she was going to her at the same time too, and she ends up having to have a surgery with her. And we got talking there at the hospital, this doctor and I, and I'm like, yeah, I told her a little bit of what was going on. I'm like, yeah, I got an appointment with you. I said, I know that I don't know where this is going to go. I said, but God told me to make this appointment with you. I said, and I argued with him, and I was like, I don't want to. I said, but I couldn't breathe until I made this phone call. And she laughed, of course, and she joked around there about it. And and so that appointment was made, and I get a phone call whenever my appointment comes up for in September, or maybe it was October. I get a phone call that my appointment has to be rescheduled, and the soonest they can get me in is in 6 weeks. And I was heartbroken. I was like, God, you tell me to go to this doctor just for the appointment to get canceled, and now to have a 6-week wait. And he let me go like that for about a week. And then, this actually happened 1st of October. And then I was sitting in my car, or I don't know, I was sitting somewhere. And it was like the Lord said, Ashley, she is the doctor at more than one office. You call that other office, and they're going to get you in. And I thought, okay. And I called that other office, and they were able to get me in within 5 days. So instead of waiting 6 weeks, I was able to get in 5 days. And they said we could have got you in the very next day. And I don't remember the reason as to why I wasn't able to make it that day. I think that I might have been sick or something. There was something going on. And so it ended up being 5 days. And whenever that appointment did come up, and of course testing was ran, and the testing all came back, and it showed that I was going to need surgery. And it had nothing to do with my back, nothing to do with my head, but it showed what I was going to have surgery on. And I had a biopsy done. And in the middle of them, or whenever they done that biopsy, just as soon as they clipped that skin, or that tissue, whatever they clipped in there, I don't know. It was the most horrifying, worst pain that I ever felt in my entire life, that I screamed in such pain. And the most amazing thing is, it shot the pain straight up into the center of my spine, where all my pain has been all along. And there was no explanation as to why that happened. And then here a week ago, I went in, I had this surgery done, and the back pain, the head pressure that I had for so long, where my head just would feel like at times it was going to explode. And for some reason, I don't know why, it would always get really bad whenever I was at church. And maybe it's the way that the seats were made, I don't know, but that's whenever it would always get the worst. And I had that surgery done, and since that surgery has been done, that pain that was in my back And that head pressure that I could never, ever get figured out has all been removed. I'm like, God, only you could have done that. Only you could explain that. Only He could. And you know, the enemy is very, very powerful. And I know that I have to stay in constant prayer that this is fully taken care of. Because I know that if I don't, I know the enemy will step in and that he will try to bring that pain all back again. And it's not that I live in fear about it, but it's just something that I'm aware of, and it's something that I know that I need to always be in prayer for. That God is the great I am. There's nothing too hard for Him. How in the world did a gynecologist do her surgery and it end up taking care of thoracic back pain? I don't know. There's no way to medically explain it except to say God done it. And what God done for me, God can do for you. You have to speak the right words over your mountain. Speak the words of victory over every situation that you're faced with. Because there is power in our words. And victory belongs to Jesus. And that is something that I always reminded myself of. Whenever the pain would be so bad, I would say, God, there is victory in your name because of what you done on the cross. You bled and died, not just so. And I know that this is going to be fixed. And I just praise Jesus and I thank Him for who He is and for what He done. And I can never thank Him enough. And I encourage you that don't give up on God. Because as long as you don't give up on Him, He won't give up on you. And there's nothing too hard for Him. I can remember being in a revival service here. It must have been back in the spring. And I remember going up front and talking to the man who preached the word. And I had just had an MRI done, and my results weren't being released to me. They said, these results cannot be released to you. You're going to have to go to your doctor. And I can remember I was very, very broken, very devastated because I wanted to know what was in that report. And just knowing that I was told that I was going to have to go see my doctor before I could go, I don't know that. I don't know. But anyways, I can remember going up front and I told him a little bit about what was going on with me. And I said, one thing that they're checking for, I said, is there was areas on my spine. I said that one appeared to be cancerous and another one was a tumor. And I told him, I said, what you preached tonight, I said, I claimed my victory. I claimed that victory, that I was going to be healed of that. And I remember he looked at me and he said, God does not always choose to heal. And that was not the words that I was expecting to hear or was wanting to hear, but I still did not let that doubt creep into my mind, and I kept strong and I said, God, I am healed. I am healed of that cancer and I am healed of the tumor. I'm not going to have back surgery, because they told me if I had surgery on that area of my back that I would be paralyzed. there was only it was like a 98% certainty that surgery in that area, I would be paralyzed. And I was like, God, you're going to do this, and I don't care what the previous report said. I have faith that this new report coming out, that I am going to be healed. And we had come across this doctor who told us about this place where we could actually send the MRI and have it read by a team of doctors. And I think it was either $200 or $300. I remember we paid that money, and it actually came through as we was getting ready to head out the door to go to church. And I printed off the report. I did not look at it, and I put it in my Bible. And I remember going up to the altar, and I prayed over that report, and I said, God, I am choosing to believe your report, not what some doctor says, but I am choosing to believe your report, which says I am healed of cancer and I am healed of this tumor. I'm choosing to believe that. And I asked this lady, I said, who I went to church with, I asked her, I said, can you come into the church with me and read these results to me? And she's like, sure. She's a nurse, and she's like, Ashley, this says everything's been resolved. What they seen previously is not found now on any of these new scans. They said evidently it resolved itself. And I was like, that's my Jesus. That is my Jesus. Only my Jesus could have done that. And I chose to believe the report of the Lord, which says, I am healed. I am healed. I am healed. I chose to believe that. And, God at that moment did not choose to heal me of the pain. He did not. And I had a lot of prayer over me, and God never chose to answer that prayer. But what he did want was for the surgery to be done, and I guess the only way for me to get that surgery done was to keep me in back pain, because only he knows what could have happened several years down the road had that surgery not been done. And that's where my faith lies. And I was, the other day, I was getting ready, and I said, God, I got these scars, and I was like, I don't like having these scars. And he told me, in my spirit, I did not hear his voice, but in my spirit, he said, Ashley, those are your battle scars. Whenever I take you through another test, whenever I bring you to the deep waters once again, I want you to be able to look at those battle scars, and I want you to be reminded of what your faith in me done, and what prayer done, and how prayer changed everything. And if I didn't have those scars, as time goes down the road, I would tend to forget that. But because of my Jesus choosing to take the road that we took of having to have this surgery, I got 3 little scars that's going to always remind me of the power of God and what he can do. And God can do anything he chooses to do. We just have to believe it. We have to believe it with our whole heart, and we cannot give up on God. And I'm not sure why, but probably from about August through October, God was very silent to me, and I wasn't used to that, because God always communicates to me in some way, but he was very silent. And I don't know why he chose to be silent during those months, But what I do know is that He was still there with me. I might have not heard His voice. There might have been times whenever I didn't feel His presence. But I do know He was there with me. And I know there was times throughout these 2 years whenever I gave up on God, but God never gave up on me. At my weakest moments, I will never forget, at my weakest moment, I was laying in bed. It was on a Sunday, and I had no plans of going to church. I had no plans of doing anything, but I had very bad thoughts in my mind that went through at that time. And I thought, all I need is for my family to get out of this house. But God, I'll never forget, He reached, I was laying in that bed, and I forget, He bent down, and he very stern voice, He said, Ashley, get up out of this bed, and I want you to go get a shower, and you get yourself dressed, and you get yourself to church. And I knew there was no arguing with God on that. That was actually back in the spring. And that was my lowest of it all during this whole ordeal. That was my lowest point ever. And I thank God for giving me a second chance. And you know, that seems like it's a common theme that God has gave me several second chances. And I thank Him for that. And I just want to try to always be aware of what God is telling me and what He's wanting me to do. And He's the best friend you can ever have. Build a relationship with Him. You will be amazed at the places He will take you. I couldn't imagine my life without God. And I thank you for joining me here today. I didn't intend for this podcast to go this long. But like I said, I pray and I always ask God to give me the words to say before I get on here. And actually, I have been praying for Him to give me the words to say since the last time I'd done a podcast, which I believe was several weeks ago. I've been in prayer about it for Him to guide me. This is the path He chose for me to take tonight. And if you don't have a close relationship with Jesus, I urge you to seek Him with your whole heart and build that relationship, because it will be one of the most rewarding and amazing things you will ever experience in your whole life. And I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for joining me here tonight. And remember, God wins. God always wins. He does not lose any battle. He always wins. He always wins. Keep your faith in Him, and He will win every battle, every single time. And thank you for joining me.